The classified transmission arrived at exactly midnight Earth Standard Time. Ambassador Vyx's hands trembled as she decoded the message, not from fear, but from rage. After 3 centuries of faithful service to the Galactic Council, her people were about to be betrayed. The evidence filled her quantum display with damning clarity: trade agreements, military coordinates, and the Council's unanimous vote sealed with their quantum signatures. The Kraxan Empire, the same brutal regime that had razed 17 worlds in the Dark Expansion, had been secretly authorized to cleanse the Valoran homeworld. The Council's justification made her silver scales bristle. The Valorans' continued sharing of advanced technology with humanity threatens the established order. They feared the alliance between her people and Earth, feared how quickly humans had adapted Valoran clean energy systems to revolutionize their civilization in mere decades. Vyx's inner eyelids flickered as she processed the implications. The Kraxan fleet would arrive in less than 48 hours. 2 billion Valorans, her entire species, would be reduced to atomic dust like so many of the Kraxan's previous victims. Unless... Her fingers flew across the quantum interface, copying the evidence to a secure channel. Earth needed to know, needed to understand why their Valoran friends were about to vanish. They deserved that much, at least. The door to her quarters hissed open. Ambassador Vyx, a smooth voice purred. The Council requests your presence. She turned to face Counselor Drek, his feline features arranged in a mask of diplomatic concern. Behind him stood 2 Kraxan guards, their plasma rifles humming with barely contained energy. How convenient, Vyx replied, subtly pressing the transmission button. I was just reviewing some fascinating documents about your recent vote. Drek's whiskers twitched. Then you understand the necessity of maintaining galactic stability. Your people's technology sharing has become disruptive. You mean humans learned too quickly? Proved too adaptable? Vyx stood tall, her silver scales catching the starlight. They showed you what real progress looks like, without your precious controlled development. Regrettable, Drek sighed, signaling the guards. But necessary. The plasma rifles raised. Vyx smiled, knowing her death would tell Earth everything they needed to know about their supposed galactic peacekeepers. Her final act would ensure humanity understood exactly what they were fighting against. The rifles fired, but not before Vyx's transmission completed its journey to Earth, carrying with it the seeds of the Council's destruction. In the darkness of space, humanity's quantum drive warships waited, their crews unaware that they were about to become the last hope of a dying race, and the architects of justice that would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Chen stared at the holographic projection until her eyes burned. Ambassador Vyx's final transmission played again, the 15th time in 3 hours, while the Joint Chiefs argued around the crystalline conference table. The Valorans gave us fusion technology, General Rivera slammed his fist down. They helped us clean our oceans, restore our atmosphere. We can't just. We're talking about confronting the entire Galactic Council, Admiral Wong interrupted. Our ships are barely tested. The quantum drives work perfectly, Chen finally spoke, her quiet voice cutting through the chaos. Because the Valorans helped us perfect them. She gestured, expanding a sector of the holographic display. Just like they helped us without asking anything in return. Just like they trusted us when the Council warned them not to. The room fell silent as Chen manipulated the tactical display, highlighting the positions of Earth's 12 newest warships. They weren't much compared to the Kraxan fleet, but they had something the enemy didn't expect. 6 months ago, Chen continued, the Valoran Science Academy shared something else with us. Something they kept secret from the Council. She pulled up the schematics. Adaptive shield harmonics. Technology the Kraxans have never encountered. The display shifted, showing simulated battle projections. Earth ships, vastly outgunned but protected by shields that learned and adapted with each hit. The Valorans had created the technology but lacked the military mindset to weaponize it. Humans, with their long history of warfare, had immediately seen its potential. 2 billion lives, Chen said softly. 2 billion people who trusted us, helped us, believed in us. The Council thinks we're primitives, barely worth acknowledging except as a threat to their control. They don't understand what humanity does when someone threatens our friends. Memory took her back to her first meeting with the Valorans, 3 years ago. She'd been captivated by their luminescent scales, their gentle wisdom, their unfailing kindness. They'd shared centuries of technological advancement freely, asking only for friendship in return. Now she understood why the Council feared that friendship. The Kraxan fleet will reach Valoran space in 33 hours, she continued. Our quantum drives can get us there in 20. We can save them, but we have to leave now. The Council will never forgive this interference, Wang warned. Chen's smile was cold as space itself. Good. Because after what they've done, forgiveness isn't part of the plan. The vote was unanimous. Within the hour, Earth's most advanced warships slipped their moorings and vanished into quantum space, leaving behind a world that had finally found something worth fighting for among the stars. In her quarters later, Chen reviewed the tactical plans one final time. The Valorans had given humanity a chance to reach for the stars. Now humanity would show the galaxy exactly what they'd learned along the way, not just about technology, but about loyalty, justice, and the true meaning of civilization. The quantum drive hummed beneath her feet as stars streaked past the viewport. Somewhere ahead, the Kraxan fleet approached their target, unaware that humanity had decided to rewrite the rules of galactic politics. They thought they were heading to a simple extermination. Instead, they were about to learn why you should never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history learning to fight against impossible odds. Chen touched the small silver scale Ambassador VYX had given her last year, a traditional Valoran symbol of trust and friendship. We're coming, she whispered to the stars. Hold on. In the ship's hold below, the experimental weapons powered up, their design a perfect fusion of Valoran insight and human determination. The Council had feared humanity's potential. They were about to discover they hadn't feared it nearly enough. The Valoran sun painted their ships in shades of amber and gold. Admiral Chen watched through the tactical display as 12 Earth vessels emerged from quantum space, their formation tight and precise. Ahead, the massive Kraxan fleet hung against the stars like a cloud of deadly insects, 57 warships arranged in their infamous Death's Hand attack pattern. They're powering up weapons, Lieutenant Park reported from Tactical. Energy signatures match known Kraxan configurations, but there's something different. Chen leaned forward. Different how? The frequencies. Park's fingers danced across his console. They're exactly matched to standard Valoran shield harmonics. They knew exactly what they'd be fighting. The Council gave them everything, Chen's voice was ice. Defensive specifications, shield frequencies, they meant for this to be a slaughter. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, execute Protocol Fibonacci. Their experimental shields shifted, the harmonics flowing through patterns based on Earth's ancient mathematical sequences. Let the Kraxans try to predict that. The enemy commander's transmission was predictably arrogant. A feline face filled the screen, whiskers twitching with disdain. Earth vessels, this is Fleet Commander Zex. You have no authority here. Withdraw or be destroyed with the Valorans. Chen smiled. Interesting proposal. Here's our counteroffer. She cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Reed, show them why humanity doesn't appreciate bullies. Earth's ships accelerated, their formation shifting into what centuries of naval warfare had taught them about knife fighting in space. The Kraxans had expected to face Valoran defenders, methodical, predictable, fighting according to their peaceful nature. Instead, they faced humans who had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. The first shots from the Kraxan fleet missed entirely, their targeting systems confused by the unconventional approach vectors. Earth's return fire was devastating. Quantum-tipped missiles phased through standard shields, while adaptive beam weapons learned from each hit, growing more effective with every shot. Their flagship is shifting position, Park reported. They're trying to reform their formation. Not today. Chen opened a channel to the Valoran Defense Command below. Begin your evacuation. We'll keep them busy. The battle bloomed across space like deadly poetry. Earth ships danced through the Kraxan formation, their smaller size and superior maneuverability turning the enemy's numerical advantage against them. Larger ships collided trying to target their nimbler opponents, while precisely timed strikes from Earth's weapons found critical weaknesses. But the Kraxans were feared for a reason. A savage barrage caught the ETS Thermopylae in a crossfire, overwhelming even its adaptive shields. The ship died in a flower of fire, taking 3 Kraxan vessels with it in its final explosion. "They're launching something at the planet," Reed's voice was tight with alarm. "Energy readings are off the scale." Chen's tactical display showed the massive weapon, a planet killer, designed to crack Valoran like an egg. And it was aimed directly at the largest population center. "All ships, converge on that launcher." Protocol Leonidas. Her crew knew what that meant. They'd drilled it, practiced it, hoped they'd never need it. 11 Earth ships accelerated to collision speed, their quantum drives pushing to impossible levels. The Kraxans, seeing what was coming, began to break formation. Too late. Earth's ships struck as one, their combined quantum fields creating a localized spacetime disruption that turned the planet killer's own energy back on itself. The explosion wiped out a quarter of the Kraxan fleet and sent the rest reeling. Status of the evacuation? Chen demanded. Valoran reports first wave of transports away, Park was grinning. They say to thank the crazy humans for the cover. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Signal the fleet. Phase 2 begins in 3 minutes. She touched the silver scale at her neck. Let's show them what else humanity learned from studying Valoran tech. The remaining Earth ships regrouped, their hulls gleaming with more than just reflected sunlight. Beneath their armor, combinations of human and Valoran technology were about to redefine what was possible in space combat. The Kraxans thought they'd come to execute a helpless species. Instead, they'd walked into humanity's declaration that the age of council corruption was over. And this was just the beginning. The quantum-encrypted files spilled their secrets across Dr. Ava Lee's holographic display aboard the diplomatic vessel Swift Justice. Each new document confirmed what they'd feared: the Valoran betrayal wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the latest in centuries of carefully orchestrated manipulations. "Look at this," she called to Admiral Chen, who had transferred to the diplomatic ship after the battle. Trade agreements from the Centauri cluster, defense protocols from the Rigel system, technology assessments from a dozen worlds, all of them filtered through council oversight committees. Chen studied the complex web of data. They've been playing everyone against each other. Worse. Li pulled up another file. They've been systematically suppressing technological advancement. Any time a species makes a breakthrough, the Council finds a way to contain it. Usually by engineering a conflict that forces them to depend on Council protection. The Admiral's expression hardened as she remembered the Kraxan fleet's weaponry, precisely calibrated to Valoran defenses. Like sending the Kraxans to eliminate the Valorans before they could share more technology with us. Exactly. Lee's fingers danced through the holographic data. But they didn't count on 2 things. First, how quickly humans would adapt Valoran technology. And second. She gestured, and a new document appeared, a centuries-old record of a council meeting. The text was diplomatic, carefully worded, but its meaning was clear. The Council had been manipulating species into conflict for a single purpose, to prevent any civilization from growing powerful enough to challenge their authority. They're afraid, Chen realized. Not just of us, but of what happens when species work together. The door chimed, admitting Captain Walker of Earth Intelligence. "It gets better," he said, his usual humor absent. "We just finished interviewing the Valoran refugees. Turns out they're not the first species to be targeted after sharing technology. Just the first to survive the attempt." He connected his datapad to the holographic display, adding another layer to the web of conspiracy. 17 species, all eliminated over the past millennium. All declared casualties of unfortunate conflicts or natural disasters. All after they'd begun sharing advanced technology with their neighbors. The Council doesn't just control technological progress, Walker explained. They control the narrative. Every species thinks they're alone in being restricted, monitored, and held back. The Valorans were the first to openly defy them by sharing with us. And we were the first to successfully defend our allies, Chen added. No wonder they wanted to eliminate the Valorans quickly. We're their worst nightmare, proof that their system of control isn't invincible. Li pulled up another document, this one bearing recent quantum signatures. They're already spinning the story. According to official Council broadcasts, Earth ships attacked the Kraxan fleet unprovoked. They're painting us as violent primitives who need to be contained. Of course they are. Chen's smile was dangerous. Because they know what happens next. We've proven their defense protocols can be beaten. We've survived their attempt to eliminate our allies. And now. She reached out, manipulating the holographic display to show a galaxy-wide view of Council-controlled space. Thousands of worlds, all living under the same system of careful manipulation and controlled development. Now every species that's ever been held back, restricted, or threatened by the Council knows it's possible to fight back. She highlighted the regions where Earth's quantum-encrypted transmissions had already begun broadcasting the truth. And they know they're not alone anymore. A new alert flashed across the display, signals from a dozen worlds, all broadcasting on frequencies the Council couldn't block. Species reaching out, sharing their own stories of Council manipulation and control. The foundation of the Council's power, the isolation and fear they'd carefully cultivated between species, was cracking. They thought humanity's warlike nature was a weakness to be controlled, Chen said softly. They never considered that our history of conflict taught us the most important lesson of all. Li looked up from her data. What's that? The thing that makes peace truly valuable is being willing to fight for it. Chen touched the silver scale at her neck. And now the real fight begins. In the depths of space, more Earth ships were already emerging from their quantum jumps, carrying evidence of the Council's corruption to every world that would listen. The age of silence and submission was over. The Council had spent centuries ensuring no single species could challenge their power. They never considered what would happen when those species finally started working together. The Council's central archive should have been impenetrable. Should have been. Admiral Chen moved silently through its crystalline corridors, her quantum-adaptive suit bending light around her form. Behind her, a mixed team of human spec ops and Valoran tech experts followed, their own suits rendering them nearly invisible. Nearly, because the Valorans' natural bioluminescence created tiny ripples in the camouflage field, a problem they'd solved by incorporating the effect into the background radiation patterns. Security grid ahead, Lieutenant Reed whispered through their quantum-linked comms. Pattern matches the data we extracted from the Kraxan flagship. Chen smiled grimly. The Kraxan's own security codes, pulled from their computers during the battle, were proving invaluable. The Council had never imagined their enforcers could be defeated, let alone their systems compromised. Begin sequence, she ordered. The Valoran techs moved forward, their silvery hands dancing through the holographic interfaces. They'd designed many of the Council's security systems over the centuries, before discovering their trusted position was really a carefully controlled cage. Above them, across 50 sectors of space, the real attack was underway. Earth ships, now joined by vessels from a dozen other species who'd answered their call, were striking Council facilities with surgical precision. Not to destroy, but to expose. Archive core in sight, Reed reported. But something's wrong. These power readings. Chen saw it too. The archive's quantum core pulsed with far more energy than data storage should require. Full spectrum scan. The results painted their tactical displays in angry red. The archive wasn't just storing data, it was transmitting. Constantly. To something massive, hidden in subspace. Admiral, one of the Valoran techs, called softly. These transmission patterns, they match ancient records from before the Council's formation. Before they claimed to be a collective of species working together. What are you saying? The Council isn't a coalition. The Valoran scales rippled with agitation. It's a puppet. And we've found the strings. The tactical display shifted, tracking the subspace signals to their destination. The image it revealed made Chen's blood run cold. A vast structure hung in the void between dimensions, its architecture unmistakably Kraxan in design. They're not just working with the Kraxans, she realized. They've been controlled by them from the start. Everything, the technological restrictions, the engineered conflicts, the species they've eliminated, it's all been to prevent anyone from becoming strong enough to detect this. Incoming. Reed's warning came just as the archive's defenses activated, not the standard security systems they'd prepared for, but something far older and more lethal. All ships, execute Protocol Phoenix, Chen commanded across the quantum network. This isn't just an exposure mission anymore. We've found their nerve center. The archive's corridors filled with shimming energy as ancient weapons powered up. But they were designed to face the technology of compliant, controlled species. Not the hybrid systems humanity had created by doing what the Council feared most, combining technologies in ways they'd never imagined. Upload complete, the Valoran tech announced. The truth is out. Everything, the Puppet Council, the Kraxan control, all of it, is being broadcast on channels they can't block. Chen nodded grimly. Now we show them why they should have feared humanity's talent for turning defense into offense. She activated her command override, transmitting new targeting data to the Allied fleet above. All ships, focus fire on these coordinates. Let's introduce their hidden masters to the light. The archive shook as space itself seemed to tear open, the combined fire of 100 Allied ships ripping through the dimensional barriers that had hidden the Kraxan control center for centuries. The true face of their enemy was about to be exposed to the galaxy. In the chaos of alarms and energy discharges, Chen's quantum link chimed with an incoming transmission. The sender's ID made her breath catch, Admiral Wong, who'd opposed the initial intervention to save the Valorans. You were right, his voice was tight with controlled fury. About everything. Earth Command has authorized Protocol Omega. Every ship we have is jumping to your coordinates. Chen allowed herself a fierce smile. The Kraxans had spent centuries manipulating other species, using the Council as their puppet to maintain control. But they'd never faced an enemy who had turned their own technology against them, or one that could unite their former victims into an army. Humanity, she broadcast to the combined fleet, has a long history of overthrowing tyranny. Time to share that experience with the galaxy. The archive's walls crystallized and shattered as the battle began in earnest, but the most important victory was already won. The truth was out, the puppet strings were visible, and the real war for the galaxy's freedom was about to begin. The grand chamber of the Earth ship Humanity's Hope had never been designed to hold so many different species. Admiral Chen stood at its center, surrounded by representatives from 24 civilizations. Each had their own story of council manipulation, their own history of suppressed advancement, their own reason to fight. The Kraxans didn't just create the council, she explained, gesturing to the holographic evidence floating above them. They designed it to ensure no other species could ever threaten their dominance. Every restriction, every regulation, every peacekeeping intervention was meant to keep us isolated, divided, and weak. A massive Centaurian rumbled agreement, its crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. They prevented us from developing quantum communications because it might let us detect their subspace network. They restricted our antimatter research, added a Rigelian scientist, their tentacles rippling with anger. Claimed it was too dangerous for our level of development. And they sent their puppets to destroy any of us who shared advancement with others, a Valoran elder finished, her scales dim with memory of their near extinction. The chamber filled with similar stories, centuries of suppressed grievances finally given voice. But Chen noticed something else in their tones, not just anger, but hope. Because humanity had shown them something the Kraxans never expected them to discover. They could fight back. High Commander. A young lieutenant rushed in, his face flushed with excitement. We're receiving new signals. The Andromeda cluster has broken away from Council control. The Orion systems are mobilizing their defense fleets. The Carina sector is. They're all rising up, Chen smiled. Because now they know they're not alone. The holographic display shifted, showing the galaxy-wide rebellion unfolding in real time. Centuries of careful Kraxan control were unraveling as species after species declared their independence from the Council's authority. But victory wouldn't come easily. The Kraxans had begun emerging from subspace in force, their true fleet far larger than anyone had imagined. They meant to crush this rebellion quickly, before it could spread further. They still have advantages, Chen continued, highlighting tactical displays. Superior numbers. Centuries of advanced technology they kept for themselves. And they're used to winning. So were the Council's forces, the Centaurian pointed out. Until they faced humans in battle. Chen nodded. Because we brought something they didn't expect, the ability to combine technologies in ways they'd never imagined. Each of your species has developments they suppressed, advancements they feared. Together. She gestured, and the tactical display changed to show schematics. Valoran quantum fields enhanced by Centaurian crystal matrices. Rigelian antimatter containment adapted to human weapon systems. Dozens of technologies, each powerful alone, becoming revolutionary when combined. They kept us apart because they feared what we could achieve together, she said quietly. Time to prove them right. A new alert flashed across the display. The Kraxans had discovered their hidden command center. An invasion fleet was inbound. They'll expect us to run, Chen noted. To scatter back to our own worlds and try to defend them separately. Because that's what they've trained us to do for centuries, to think only of ourselves, to never trust, to never unite. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs of each species' representatives. But we're not going to run. We're going to show them what happens when they push too far. When they threaten our allies, our friends, our families. We're going to show them why humanity spent centuries writing stories about overthrowing empires and fighting impossible odds. The chamber erupted in sounds of agreement, roars, whistles, harmonic hums, and dozens of other expressions of support. The Kraxans had spent centuries ensuring no single species could challenge them. They never planned for all of those species working together, inspired by humanity's example. All ships, battle stations, Chen commanded. Show them what we can really do. As the combined fleet moved into formation, she touched the silver scale at her neck, her reminder of why this fight mattered. The Kraxans thought they were facing a disorganized rebellion. Instead, they were about to confront every species they'd ever tried to suppress, united for the first time in galactic history. And leading them into battle was the one thing the Kraxans feared most, humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Kraxan invasion fleet emerged from subspace like a storm of darkness, their ships blotting out the stars. Behind them, the dimensional rift to their hidden empire gaped open, a wound in reality that had festered for centuries. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's hope, watching the enemy approach. Around her vessel, the combined fleet of 24 species held formation. Ships that had never been designed to work together now moved as one, their technologies interconnected in ways the Kraxans had spent centuries trying to prevent. Their broadcasting, Lieutenant Park announced. Text only. Surrender now and your species will be preserved as servants. Chen smiled. Send our response. The quantum-encrypted transmission carried more than just words. It carried proof, evidence of every betrayal, every manipulation, every species the Kraxans had destroyed through their puppet council. And it broadcast on frequencies they couldn't block, to every world in the galaxy. All ships, Chen commanded, execute Operation Unity. The Allied fleet split into formations developed through thousands of years of combined military experience. Centaurian dreadnoughts paired with nimble Earth destroyers. Valoran science ships linked their quantum fields through Rigelian amplifiers. Each species contributing what the Kraxans had feared most, their unique strengths, working in harmony. The enemy struck first, their weapons powered by technology they'd hoarded for generations. Space itself seemed to warp under their assault. But humanity had learned something in its long history of warfare: the most powerful weapons weren't always the most effective. What mattered was how you used them. Counter-battery fire, Chen ordered. Show them what happens when you corner scientists and tell them they're not allowed to advance. The Allied fleet responded with innovations the Kraxans had never imagined. Valoran quantum fields, enhanced by human battle computers, created defensive screens that adapted faster than the enemy could adjust. Centaurian crystal matrices, linked through Earth's targeting systems, turned the Kraxans' own energy weapons back against them. Their formation is breaking, Park reported, excitement clear in his voice. They don't know how to fight against coordinated species. Of course they don't. Chen's voice was steel. It's why they spent centuries keeping us apart. And it's why they're going to lose. The battle raged across dimensional boundaries, neither side willing to yield. The Kraxans fought with the desperate fury of tyrants facing rebellion. The Allies fought with the strength of the long-oppressed finally united. But the true turning point came from an unexpected source. Deep within the Kraxan Empire, on worlds they'd conquered centuries ago, enslaved species were rising up. The truth of their oppressors' manipulation had reached even there, carried by frequencies the Kraxans couldn't silence. Admiral. Dr. Li's voice crackled over the quantum link. The dimensional rift, their power readings are fluctuating. Their whole empire is coming apart. Chen nodded grimly. Because they built it all on lies and fear. And now everyone knows the truth. She opened a channel to all ships. This is the moment. Everything we've got, hit that rift with everything we've got. The combined fleet struck as one. Not just with weapons, but with the very technologies the Kraxans had tried to suppress. Quantum fields resonated with dimensional harmonics. Antimatter streams disrupted subspace barriers. 24 species worth of scientific advancement, unleashed at once. The rift collapsed with a silent scream of tortured spacetime. The Kraxan Empire, hidden for so long between dimensions, felt the full force of its victims' retribution. In the aftermath, as Allied ships began rescue operations for worlds the Kraxans had enslaved, Chen stood in the Great Chamber once more. But this time, she wasn't alone. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the space and its quantum-linked extensions, all gathered to decide the galaxy's future. We've won our freedom, she addressed them. But that's not enough. The Kraxans rose to power because they kept us divided, suspicious, afraid to trust. We won because we finally learned to work together, to share our strengths, to stand united against tyranny. She touched the silver scale at her neck one final time, remembering the friend who had died to help humanity see the truth. Let that be our legacy. Not just the victory, but what we do with it. We build something new, not based on fear and control, but on cooperation. On trust. On the simple truth that we are all stronger together than we could ever be alone. The chamber erupted in agreement. Species that had been enemies under council rule now worked together to forge new alliances. Ancient grievances gave way to shared purpose. The age of isolation was over. Humanity had given the galaxy something the Kraxans never could: hope. Hope that came not from power or control, but from the simple courage to stand together against injustice. To fight not just for oneself, but for others. To believe that unity was stronger than fear. As Chen looked out at the assembled species, each unique, each valuable, each free at last to reach their full potential, she smiled. The Kraxans had feared what would happen if advanced species worked together. They should have been more afraid of what would happen when they didn't leave them any choice. The galaxy was entering a new age. And this time, no one would face the darkness alone.